Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another video. It is Wednesday, I hope you all are having a fantastic week so far. I wanted to sit down and talk about fans returning to football stadiums today because it's a big topic of conversation obviously all across the world now that the Premier League restarted, and obviously we know with the latest announcements of the Premier League fixtures for the 2020-21 season, we know that the majority of at least the first half of the season, if not all of the first half of the season, will be played behind closed doors. Everton play games like Tottenham Hotspur away from home, Liverpool at home, I think we played Chelsea at home as well during that period of time, so we're going to be playing a lot of games behind closed doors with no fans present in the stadium. But it's definitely a topic of conversation, and Brighton and Hove Albion had actually announced that last Saturday. I'm recording this in advance, so it's this coming Saturday for me, but last Saturday from when you're watching it, they will have allowed a set amount of fans into the stadium for one of their pre-season games against Chelsea, and there's also various other sports across the country that are starting to allow fans back into stadiums. So I wanted to sit down and talk about us returning to Goodison Park really, because I think, listen, every Everton game we watched post obviously the suspension of football and when the Premier League returned with the Merseyside derby all the way up until the game against Bournemouth, and even the pre-season games, you know, we've seen against Blackburn and Blackpool, it's a little bit of a sour sort of feeling looking at the games and thinking, you know, I should be there or we should be there supporting the team. Certainly the Premier League games towards the back end of last season, you know, the Merseyside derby, the first game back after the suspension of football, it really hit home, you know, the severity of the inability of fans being able to go to games. And listen, we all know that football without fans is nothing. It's absolutely nothing, and it's very tough to watch a lot of the games you know, without the fans. Certainly with the fake crowd noise and stuff, I know it's not to everybody's cup of tea. Personally, I don't mind it because I can sort of zone out and make myself think like there's fans in the stadium, but I know that a lot of people have the feeling that it's just, you know, it's fake. It is what it is. It's fake. It's not real. It's crowds cheering that aren't actually there to cheer. It's just a created atmosphere, isn't it? And you know, it's not good to have that. So I think we all know that, and we all want, you know, us to be returning to football stadiums very soon, of course, once it's completely safe to do so, and once that you know, the government and the Premier League decide that it is safe to do so. But returning to Goodison Park, I think, is something that most Evertonians, if not probably every Evertonian, wants to do. You're starting to see videos going around social media now of various games last season and in the seasons prior of goals scored at Goodison Park and the crowd going absolutely apeshit, and moments at Goodison Park where you're there to watch it. And you know, the fact that we haven't been to Goodison Park since the beginning of March, it's been over it'll be just coming up to 6 months within the next couple of weeks or so, it's heartbreaking. It really is heartbreaking because I miss it every single time I watch Everton play. I miss it every single time I see, you know, the players on the training pitch. Every single time I seen the players play out at Goodison Park, I couldn't help but look at my seat and think I should be sat there cheering these lads on. And obviously we knew once the return of football came and the players were playing behind closed doors and there was very strict rules and regulations, we all knew that there was very little chance at that point that the discussion around fans returning to football stadiums was going to be brought up. However, now obviously, you know, we're 6 months down the line since the Premier League was initially suspended. We've had the return of the Premier League, we've had the confirmed fixtures for next season, and we've also had some bits of information fed to us from the government as to state that when fans and spectators and supporters may be allowed back into sporting venues to watch their sporting sides, whether it be football, whether it be rugby, whether it be cricket, etc. So I think it's about time that we sit down and we have this conversation, and certainly because of the way that it looks like fans are going to be you know, brought back into stadiums in certain bunches. I think we all know, if we're being realistic, as much as we'd like it, we all know that the government and the Premier League aren't going to sit there and say, right, okay, from February you can have 40,000 fans standing within centimetres of each other cheering the team on a Saturday afternoon, whether it be fans of you know, different ages, whether it be fans from different households. You can have every single seat filled in your stadium, no problem at all. We all know the reality of the situation, and the reality of this situation is that it's likely to be a couple of thousand of fans at any one time, and that's what Brighton have done, and we'll talk over Brighton's plans in just a second. But I know that hasn't settled well with Evertonians. I've already seen a lot of Evertonians on social media, whether it be Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, in the YouTube comments on the live streams, talking about how they're not comfortable going back to Goodison Park if they've got to sit 10 metres away from the next fan. They're not comfortable going back to Goodison Park and most of the stadium being empty. It's either we all go back or none of us go back, and I understand that. I do understand that, and you know, there's also talk about how they're going to choose the fans that are allowed back into stadiums. What happens if you're a small child and you go to the match with your dad and there's a ticket pulled out for you but not your dad? How do you get the game? We'll talk about that in just a second later on in the video. Let me know what you're all doing as well in the comment section down below. I hope you're doing well. But like I said, I've been wanting to talk about this topic for a while, because certainly after the Premier League fixtures got released and it sort of looked like we were playing the majority of our tough fixtures away from home in the back end of next season, in the the start of the year, which is the time around about that we're assuming that fans will be allowed back in stadiums in some form. Now, obviously, initially mid-July, Boris Johnson and the government come out and said that they're looking at October as a date for spectators and supporters to return to football and stadiums across the country to watch their sides play. Looks like that's probably not going to happen now, considering we're only a couple of months away from October. There's still, massive issues going on in the world. Of course, the virus is still very, very prominent, and it's still very, very dangerous at the moment. We're not going to see football fans back in stadiums by October, and it would surprise me if we see football fans back in stadiums before January, February time. But January, February time does come in the middle of the Premier League season, so it's obviously for discussion. So anyway, on to Brighton's news for in regards to this video. Like I said, I've wanted to do this video for a couple of weeks' time. I thought, what better way to do it than now that there's been sort of an announcement from Premier League club regarding fans coming back into stadiums. So Alan Myers tweeted this out, Sky Sports, obviously correspondent, very close to Everton Football Club, but he tweeted out, Sky Sports reported it as well as the BBC, and he said a total of 2,500 tickets will be made available to Brighton and Hove Albion season ticket holders and club members for a pre-season friendly against Chelsea at the Amex Stadium this Saturday, the 29th of August, 3 p.m. So obviously, like I mentioned, I'm pre-recording this. I'm recording this prior to the game, a couple of days prior to the game, so you will have already seen the game. You'll have already seen how the fans fit into the stadiums, what it's like, what the atmosphere is like, whether it's a good thing, whether it's a bad thing. We'll all already know this, but let's sort of just talk about that in itself, is that Brighton have made 2,500 tickets available to A, season ticket holders, and B, club members as well. Now, this won't actually be the first time that we've seen fans in football stadiums over the last couple of weeks or so. It'll be the first time in England and in the UK, I believe, but in France over the last couple of days or so, I was watching a couple of French league games and friendlies over the weekend, and there was fans in the stadiums there, and there was a couple of thousand fans, not sure how many, but there was fans there watching their teams playing. The games were live on BT Sport. You could see the atmosphere, you could see what it was like, and it wasn't ideal. Look, it's not ideal and it's not fantastic. It does very much feel, again, like it did when we seen the first Bundesliga game all the way back in, June, May, June, whenever it was, when the Bundesliga returned, and that was the first game of football back, for months and months since the suspension, and obviously there was no fans in the stadium at that point, and a lot of people, including myself, actually done a video on it, said it felt like a pre-season game. It felt like two sides that were just in training basically, and just thought they'd have an 11-a-side game against each other at the end of it. There was obviously no atmosphere. It was at this point, I don't think there was stadium noise at that point as well, so there was nothing to drown it out. You could hear the players talking to each other, you could hear the players screaming. It did feel like a pre-season game, and obviously fast forward all of those months and we've seen the rest of the Bundesliga and we've seen the Premier League games and the Champions League final, etc. And like I said, I sort of got used to it a little bit more. I always knew that watching two sides in Germany wasn't ever really going to take me fancy. I probably wouldn't watch the Bundesliga anyway, unless there was absolutely nothing else on the telly. I probably wouldn't watch the Bundesliga anyway with fans in the stadium. So watching that, knowing that there's no fans in the stadium and knowing that there's going to be a negative reaction, I did watch it and think, this is like a pre-season game. The quality of football wasn't great. This is like a pre-season game or a training session. I'm not really into it. Of course, when Everton returned against Liverpool, that sort of all went out the window. You're focusing on the game, you're watching the game, you're supporting your team, you're emotionally invested. So a lot of that sort of didn't go out the window, because it's still, noticeable that there's no fans in the stadium. And like I said, and I'll say it throughout this video, and I'll continue saying it, and I've said it from the return of football all those months back when they spoke about bringing football back without fans. Football without fans is nothing. Fans make football clubs, they make football stadiums, and without the fans in the stadiums, it's nothing. And we've got a manager in Carlo Ancelotti who has echoed that message multiple times over the last couple of months or so. Near enough every post-game interview he done and pre-game match press conference he done, he spoke about how the lack of fans is not ideal whatsoever, and that you know, the sooner we can get fans back in the stadiums in a safe environment, supporting the team, the better, because this isn't how football should be. Football isn't, you know, players playing in front of nobody in massive stadiums. It's 40,000-50,000 fans screaming on their team, cheering on their team with that emotional investment. So like I said, when Everton returned, I was invested in Everton. I wanted us to do well, and I was worried about what was going on the pitch, especially because a lot of what was going on the pitch was very, very poor. But like I mentioned, you know, we would seen the return of fans in France over the last couple of days or so, the weekend, a couple of weeks ago. Not too sure if we've seen it in other countries, to be perfectly honest with you. I just know it was in France, because I was watching the game. I think it was France. It might have been no, it was France, because it was Stade Rennes who were playing. I can't remember who they were playing for the life of me, but there was fans in the stadium ultimately. And again, I was watching it and I thought, this feels a little bit pre-season-y. There's, you know, obviously the stadium isn't full. You know, you can really hear. When there's a small amount of fans in the stadium, you can sort of weirdly not hear them more, but I think the sound is more enhanced to you, because you know that it's not a full stadium, and it's you know, it's a lot quieter than it would be usually. You know, noise in a football stadium, whether you're there watching the game live or whether you're watching the game on television, it's second nature, isn't it? You hear screaming, you hear shouting, you hear just a level of noise that, you know, you expect to hear when you're watching football matches. So it did feel very pre-season-y, and I thought it was strange, and I don't know whether this will be how Brighton sort of strategised it. I don't know whether this will be how any other Premier League team strategised it, but it felt a little bit strange. I don't know whether it was just me only catching a couple of glimpses of the fans sat in the seats, or whether this was the case, but it almost felt like the fans were all sort of collided together, and then there was big massive spaces in the stadium. So it wasn't like fans were sat with 4 or 5 seats between each other. There was fans sat with 1 seat between each other. There was fans sat next to each other. Now obviously I don't know whether those fans sat next to each other were part of the same household, with the same family, had quarantined together. I don't know any of that information, but what I do know is that there must have been a few hundred fans who were in quite close proximity of each other, and I'm assuming that they don't all know each other or live in the same house. And then there was massive areas of the stadium that had nobody in, so it felt a little bit strange. If you get an opportunity, go and watch some of the Stade Rennes game from Saturday afternoon. It was the day of the Champions League final, and go and watch the layout of how their fans return to stadiums. Maybe it's just me. But anyway, like I said, that was sort of give us the first glimpse, if you watch that game, of how it could look with fans returning to football stadiums in small amounts. Now, obviously, Brighton announcing that 2,500 tickets will be made available for season ticket holders and ticket club members is a massive move. It's a massive move, and I was shocked when I read this, to be perfectly honest, because I didn't think it had been passed by the government that fans could return to football stadiums. I didn't think it was allowed yet. I'd have thought that the government would have to make some announcement that, right, okay, from this point, fans can start returning, and maybe they have, and I've completely missed it, but I can't see how I would have missed that, because it'd be massive news, and I think a lot of football clubs will be looking to implement that. I just remember scrolling through Twitter and seeing Alan Myers' tweet saying that, you know, 2,500 tickets have been made available for the Brighton-Chelsea pre-season friendly at the weekend, and you know, there'll be fans in the stadium. And I was like, hang on, how's that happened there? Have I missed something here? Have I missed a law that's being passed? Have I missed the government saying, yeah, that's okay now, you can do that? Was there ever a, no, it's not okay, and is it just down to the football club? Again, like I said, I was a little bit confused, I really was. But like I said, from what we know, talking about this in the past tense, because I'm pre-recording this, when you're watching this, the game will have already happened and there will have been fans in the stadium. So it'll be interesting to see how Brighton lay it out. The key bit of information for me is that 2,500 season ticket holders and club members. Now, again, taking away the fact that the tickets will only be available to club members and season ticket holders, that number 2,500, I know if Everton turned around and said, we're going to allow 2,500 fans into the stadium for the game against Preston, or into the stadium for the first home game of the season, there'll be a lot of fans that said, brilliant, yeah, I want to go and watch Everton again, I'll be there. But there'd also be a lot of fans that said, you know, no, hang on, I don't want to be back in that Goodison Park, I don't want to be back at Goodison Park until we're all back at Goodison Park, until I can hear the atmosphere. I don't want to be there as if it's a pre-season friendly, again, talking about the Premier League now, obviously not the game against Preston, because that is a pre-season friendly. I don't want to be there playing, you know, facing Liverpool if there can only be 2,000 fans and the nearest fans miles away from me, because it just won't feel the same. I want us all back in the stadium. Now, of course, we know that we won't all be put back in the stadium at once. Like I said, they're not just going to say, right, okay, we'll go from no fans in the stadium and the game's being played behind closed doors to every fan in the stadium. 40,000 fans in Everton's case sold out. It will be slowly but surely brought in, and it will be gradually brought brought in, whether it be 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, and then up and up until it's safe to have everybody back in the stadium. Ultimately, it's about the safety of the fans, the safety of the players, the safety of the staff, the safety of the security, and it's about absolutely nullifying the spread of this virus and making sure that it doesn't spread any further than it currently already has. We've done fantastic. The NHS has done fantastic to keep that level as low as they possibly can, and it's still higher than we would like it to be. But what we don't want is to throw loads of football fans in stadiums and then that level rise again to an uncontrollable point, and we get that second peak that is being talked about an awful lot. So, like I said, the 2,500 tickets is something that I think a lot of fans aren't going to take to. There's something that a lot of fans are going to think, well, you know what, I'd rather be sat at home and everybody be sat at home than only a couple of people being allowed in the stadium. I also think it's going to cause issues between fans as well. Social media is a massive thing these days regarding football fans, and it doesn't take much for football fans to kick off on each other. It doesn't take much for there to be arguments. It doesn't take much for there to be negativity. I just don't see a fair system in putting football fans in stadiums in that amount. Now, okay, you could say, well, we're going to put them all in a hat and we're going to pick them out, but what if they pick a name out and then that person goes, no, I don't want to go because, I go with my mum, or I go with my dad, or I go with my sister, and I don't want to go on my own, and then that name goes back in the hat, they do it again, and they're just going to keep doing that until they get 2,000 odd people that say, yeah, I'll take the ticket, I want to go. That's another big talking point, of course, is that Goodison Park, especially, again, I can only talk on my point of view from an Everton fan, because I'm an Everton fan. I'm at Goodison Park every single week. Everton Football Club are a very, very family-orientated football club. Pretty much everybody that goes to the match either goes with their brother, goes with their dad, goes with their mate. I go with my dad and my dad's best friend. There's people around me that go with their mums, that go with their sisters, that go with their granddads, that go with their granddaughters. There's families of mum, dad, daughter and son who sit in the family enclosure. So how is that going to work in picking out which fans can return to stadiums and which fans can sit and watch the football club? Is it going to be names of groups in a hat? So right, okay, I've pulled out for example, me and my dad and my dad's mate can go to the game, but everybody else around us can't, or everybody else in our row can't. Is it going to be right, the Smith family can go, but that's the family? Or is it going to be literally the name? Because if you're pulling out names on a name basis, then there's going to be a lot of people that say, well, I can't go because I go with my dad, or I'm not willing to go because I go with my son and it means he won't be able to go, and my son can't go because he's too young. So how is it going to work? There's a lot of questions around it, and I think that's why a lot of clubs have stayed away from it at the moment, because, well, ultimately, certainly in Everton's case, like I said, there's a lot of other things going on at the football club that are being focused on at the moment. Transfers, obviously being ready for the upcoming Premier League season in terms of fitness, bringing new players in, trying to get rid of the deadwood players, trying to sort everything out for the upcoming season. We've just had 3, kit launches within a month or so, month and a half's time. So I think Everton are probably sort of thinking we'll put that on the back burner a little bit, because it's going to take a lot of thought. It's not just a case of, Sam, we'll make 2,500 tickets available for one game and we'll put all the names in the hat, because there's going to be a lot of complications to it, and there's going to be a lot of fans that, aren't happy to go unless everybody's there. There's going to be a lot of fans that are happy to go to Goodison Park, even if there's only a certain amount of fans that are allowed in. But how is that chosen? How is it chosen fairly? What happens then if somebody picks somebody's names picked out of a hat? Let's just say it is done like that. Again, there's no saying that it will be done like that, but let's just say the easiest example is that names are pulled out of a hat or on a system. What happens then if they take the ticket and go to the game? Are they then excluded from the next game, or are they then excluded for the whole season? What happens if somebody gets their name picked out of a hat and they get Burnley at home, no disrespect to Burnley, and then their dad gets the derby at home? What happens if there's conflict there? Is the name, like I said, is once your name pulls out, is that it for the season? Do you get 5 games? Do you get 10 games? Does your name go in the hat every single week? What happens if somebody's name gets pulled out? Very unlikely. But what happens if somebody's name gets pulled out 3 or 4 times on the bounce? How is that fair on other fans that haven't had their name pulled out that might want to go to Goodison Park? I don't know. Listen, I don't know. It's going to be difficult. It's definitely going to be something that the club need to sit down and really, really think about. It'll be massively interesting to see how it goes for Brighton at the weekend. And like I said, this video is being pre-recorded and won't go out until next Wednesday. So we'll have already seen the game on Saturday, and we'll have already, I'm sure, seen pictures and I'm sure seen social media articles about the fans returning to the stadiums and how it worked and whether it worked well and whether it was, how safe it was and how the players reacted to it. And I'm sure, again, I'm quite busy on Saturday afternoon, but if I can catch a little bit of the Brighton game, I would really, really like to see how the fans are involved. And I take it, like I said, another, variable to think about is that if you're playing a side at Goodison Park, let's say Everton are playing Chelsea, do the away side get a certain allocation of tickets, or is it just completely home fans? If that's the case, then obviously the home team have a massive advantage. Does some of the away fans get, I don't know, say 200 out of the 2,500 tickets, or do they get none? There's a lot of questions to be answered, and I'm sure a lot of them will be answered by watching that Brighton game or by observing that Brighton game and how it works on Saturday. And then I'm sure a lot of clubs will be waiting for that game to look at it and to see how Brighton have done it, to see if it was successful. If so, follow how they have done it. If it's not successful, right, okay, they've done it and it hasn't worked, we'll have to go back to the drawing board and see how it will work. It is all part of the government's pilot scheme about fans returning to football stadiums and stuff. So listen, it's going to be really, really interesting. I want to know your thoughts in the comment section down below about this. Would you be happy to go back to Goodison Park if there was a limited amount of tickets? Are you one of those fans? And bearing in mind, there's a lot of fans that are of the opinion of, look, I don't want to go back to Goodison Park until I can go back with 40,000 raging, screaming, fuming Evertonians screaming at guilty tickets and for standing around pointing his finger. Or are you one of those fans that says, listen, I'm desperate to go back at any opportunity, whether it be with no one in the stadium except me, or whether it be everyone in the stadium, I want to go back. I really, really want to hear your thoughts and opinions on this. Like I said, it'd be really interesting to see how it works for Brighton on Saturday, and I'll definitely be trying to catch a little bit of that and reading some of the articles on that. If you've enjoyed the video, please do hit that like button. It means a massive amount to me. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe as well. Like I said, leave your thoughts on everything we've spoke about in the comment section down below. Really, really would appreciate it. Let me know your thoughts on the situation as well. Would you be happy to go back to Goodison Park? Who do you go the match with? If you do go the match, whether it be an Everton fan, whether it be a fan of another football club, who do you go the match with? And would you be happy if your name got pulled out and the person you went the match with didn't? Would you go? Would you say to them, you have my ticket? How would that work for you? And ultimately, look, I think we're all looking forward to getting back to Goodison Park. Listen, we know that it has to be completely safe and there has to be the minimum risk of potentially creating a second wave of this virus. We know that there's already been far too many casualties, far too many people have lost their lives, far too many people have lost loved ones over this virus. Throughout this pandemic, and at the hands of this virus. And it would be absolutely ridiculous for football clubs to allow 40-odd thousand, 50-odd thousand fans back into a stadium when the virus isn't at a level where it can be massively controlled. So we are likely to see fans, being brought back into stadiums on a gradual basis. Let me know how you feel about that. Would you rather nobody in the stadium until everybody can go back, or are you happy for fans to go back on a gradual basis? And would you be, will you be happy to go back yourself if that is the case? Let me know your thoughts on the video in the comment section down below. Like I said, please do hit the like button if you have enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Loads of content coming as well, so we'll be keeping you up to date with all of that. Big thanks for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you soon on the Mighty Blues.